The room was quiet, too quiet, like a silence that pressed against the walls. In the center stood a small cradle, carved from pale wood polished smooth, and wrapped in faded blankets. The cradle rocked gently, not from the wind, not from touch, but from the trembling hand of a mother who sat beside it. She was an alien woman, tall, with soft silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Her voice carried through the room in a broken melody, a lullaby, one she had sung many times before. It was the song of her people, a song mothers sang to calm their children. But now the cradle was empty and her arms were bare. Her name was Lyra, and she had lost her baby weeks ago. In the chaos of smoke and fire, the soldiers had come. The invasion had burned through her city. The cries of children and the screams of the wounded had filled the air. In that storm, she had been told her daughter did not survive. She had buried hope the way she buried her tears. Still, every night she returned to the cradle. She sang as if the child were still there, as if singing could reach across the void and bring her back. Her song was low, filled with sorrow, but also filled with love. Her fingers traced the empty blankets, her body swayed with the rhythm. Tears slipped down her silver cheeks, shining like liquid stars. The neighbors whispered that she had gone mad. They said no one should sing to emptiness. They said grief had broken her, but Lyra did not care for her. The cradle was not empty, not truly. In her heart, she still felt the warmth of her daughter. The tiny weight that had once filled her arms, tonight was colder than most nights. The moonlight leaked through the cracked window, bathing the cradle in silver glow. Lyra's voice shook as she sang. Her throat was raw, but she did not stop. She would never stop. Suddenly, she felt a strange chill. The air moved as though someone had entered the room. Her song faltered. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes widened. In the doorway stood a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in worn clothes. A human. His face was dirty, scarred from battle. His hands were rough. Yet what froze Lyra's breath was not him. It was what he carried. In his arms was a small bundle, wrapped in fabric torn and stained from travel. The human's eyes met hers, tired but steady. He stepped forward, and as he moved closer, the fabric shifted. From inside came a soft sound. A whimper, a baby's cry. Lyra's heart stopped. Her mind told her it was impossible. Her daughter was gone. She had cried at her grave. Yet her soul screamed with recognition. The cry pierced through her, tearing open wounds she thought were closed. Her hands rose without thought, trembling as if afraid the vision would vanish. The human spoke, his voice deep and careful. "I found her," he said. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of 100 battles. In the ruins, buried under stone. "I pulled her out. She was alive," Lyra gasped. Her knees gave way. She clutched the edge of the cradle to keep herself from falling. The lullaby she had been singing still echoed faintly in the room, now mixing with the tiny cry of the child. The cradle that had been empty now seemed to wait, ready to be filled again, but doubt struck her. Was this real? Or was grief creating illusions? Was this man a savior? Or was he playing some cruel trick? Her eyes darted between the human and the bundle, fear and hope clashing in her chest. The human stepped closer, slowly, as if he understood her fear. He lowered the bundle toward her arms. The fabric parted and Lyra saw her daughter's face, small, fragile, with the same soft glow in her skin, the same spark in her tiny eyes. A sob broke free from Lyra's throat. She reached out, cradling the baby to her chest. Her daughter squirmed, then calmed as soon as she felt her mother's warmth. The bond was instant, powerful, undeniable. Lyra pressed her lips against the baby's forehead, whispering the song again, but now with trembling joy. The human stood silently, watching. His chest rose and fell with exhaustion. His eyes softened. He did not interrupt. He had carried the child through danger, through fire and ruin, only to see this moment. Lyra's tears fell onto the child's cheeks, but the baby did not cry. The empty cradle beside her was no longer a grave of memory. It was a promise, a place of life, and yet, as joy filled her, a shadow lingered in her mind. Why had this human come? What had he risked? What dangers followed him? Lyra held her baby tighter, not willing to let her go again. Her heart pounded as she lifted her gaze to the man. Outside, the sound of boots echoed faintly in the night. Soldiers, enemies, hunters of survivors. Lyra realized this reunion was not safe. The cradle might be full again, but the danger had just begun. The lullaby that once carried sorrow now carried a warning. Her song trembled as her voice filled the room once more. But this time the human did not stand at the doorway silently. He stepped inside, shut the door, and whispered, "They will come here soon." The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of the baby's soft breathing. Lyra's arms tightened around her child. Afraid the moment would vanish if she blinked, the human stood still, his shadow stretching across the cracked floorboards. His face was hard, shaped by battles and suffering, but his eyes carried something different. Not cruelty, not indifference, but a quiet determination. He cleared his throat, speaking again. "I carried her through the ruins. Through fire and smoke, I kept her safe. I promised I would bring her back." His words were plain, but they cut into Lyra's heart. Each syllable carried truth, the kind that could not be faked, yet suspicion still coiled in her chest. She looked at him with trembling eyes. Why would a human risk his life for an alien child? Her voice cracked, part disbelief, part fear. The wars between their kinds were cruel. Humans and her people did not trust one another. They did not save each other, they destroyed. The human's jaw tightened. He lowered his gaze as if ashamed. "I don't expect you to understand. I don't even expect you to believe me. But when I saw her there, buried, crying so weakly I couldn't leave her. I've seen enough graves," Lyra swallowed, her throat dry. Her arms curled protectively around her daughter as she whispered the lullaby again. The baby stirred but stayed calm, her small fingers clinging to her mother's robe. The cradle, once empty, now seemed alive again, but her eyes never left the human. Suspicion and gratitude wrestled within her heart. The man shifted his weight. His boots scraped softly against the ground. He looked toward the door, where faint sounds of marching still echoed from outside. "They're searching the ruins," he said. "If they find us, they'll kill us both, and her too." He nodded at the baby. His voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it, urgency hidden beneath control. Lyra stiffened, fear surged through her body. She had waited so long for this moment, prayed for her daughter's return, and now danger threatened to snatch it away. Her instincts told her to hide, to run, but where could she go? Her home was already broken, her world already burning. She whispered, "Why bring her here? Why not keep her safe with your own kind?" The man met her gaze. His eyes flickered with pain. "Because your kind would never trust a human with a child. And because she cried for you. Not for me, I knew she didn't belong to me. She belonged here with her mother." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Lyra studied his face, his scarred skin, the weariness in his stance, the way he did not reach for her or the baby. He asked for nothing, he demanded nothing. His only act was returning life where death had been. The sounds outside grew louder. A shout carried through the broken streets. Boots striking stone in unison, Lyra's blood ran cold. The man straightened, stepping closer, not in threat but in protection. "We have to move," he said firmly. "They will search this house soon. If they find you, they will not spare her. And they will not spare me." Lyra's mind raced. Fear and confusion tangled with the fragile hope she clutched in her arms. Her daughter's warmth against her chest reminded her she could not lose again. Not now, not after this miracle. She bit her lip, staring at the man. "Can I trust you?" His answer came without hesitation. His voice low but filled with conviction. "You don't have to trust me. Just trust that I won't let harm touch her. Not while I breathe," her breath caught. The weight of his words pressed into her heart. He sounded like a man who had already lost too much. Someone who carried grief like a shadow. Someone who knew what it meant to protect even when everything else was gone. Lyra glanced at the cradle. She had dreamed of seeing it full again, dreamed of hearing her baby's soft sounds. But she realized now the cradle would not protect her child. Not in this broken place, the world outside was not safe. Her child's survival depended not on wood and blankets, but on choices. The man extended his hand, not toward the baby, but toward her. His palm open, waiting, his eyes serious but steady. "If you stay, they will find you. If you come with me, I can take you somewhere safer. It won't be easy, it won't be gentle, but it will be life." Lyra's heart thundered in her chest. Her daughter's small hand pressed against her skin. Tiny and warm, she looked at the human's hand, strong and scarred, then at his eyes. A war raged inside her. Could she walk into danger guided by a stranger? Could she place her trust in someone she had been taught to fear? Outside, the sound of breaking doors echoed through the streets. Soldiers were moving closer. Her time to decide was gone, her breath shuddered. She pressed her lips against her baby's head. whispering a promise only a mother could give. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached out and placed her hand in his. The human nodded once, sharp and certain. He pulled her gently but firmly away from the cradle, away from the broken safety of the past. Together they moved toward the back of the house. Their steps hurried, their breaths heavy. Lyra clutched her daughter close, the lullaby still trembling in her throat. The cradle sat alone again in the middle of the room, swaying softly as if rocked by unseen hands. But this time it was not empty in despair. It was empty because life had moved forward, because survival had chosen another path. And as they slipped into the night, the shadows of danger closed in. The human's voice whispered like iron, "Stay close. I'll get you both through this." The night air was sharp as they slipped into the ruins. Lyra clutched her baby close, the warmth of the small body pressed against her chest. Every breath the child made felt like proof that she was alive, proof that this was no dream. The human moved ahead carefully, his step silent though his boots touched broken stone. His hand rested on the wall as he guided her through the rubble. They stopped inside a collapsed tunnel. The human raised his hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Outside, voices echoed. Soldiers were searching house by house, their torches burning like angry stars in the dark. Lyra held her breath, rocking her child gently to keep her calm. The baby whimpered a soft sound, and panic shot through Lyra's heart. The human turned his head sharply. His eyes meeting hers, he pressed a finger to his lips, then stepped forward to block the view of the tunnel entrance. His body became a shield, standing between danger and the fragile life in her arms. Lyra's chest ached with fear, but the baby's whimper faded as she pressed her tiny face against her mother's skin. Minutes felt like hours before the soldiers passed. Their voices grew faint, their torches disappeared down the street. The human exhaled slowly, lowering his guard. "We must move while it's quiet," he whispered. His voice was firm but calm, as though he had done this many times before. Lyra followed, though her mind raced with doubt. She was fleeing into the night with a human stranger, yet each time fear tried to root her in place. She looked down at her daughter. The child was alive, her breath warm, her eyes opening now and then to look at her mother. Lyra could see recognition in those eyes, fragile but true. It broke her heart and healed it at the same time. They reached a small ruin at the edge of the city. The walls had crumbled, leaving only a roof and a broken fireplace. The human stopped, motioning her inside. It was quiet here. Safer than the open streets, he crouched down, pulling a small pack from his shoulder. Inside were scraps of food, a flask of water, and a thin blanket. "Rest here for a moment," he said. "You and the child need strength. We cannot keep moving forever." Lyra sat carefully. Her back against the wall, she unwrapped the child slightly. Pressing her cheek to the baby's hair, tears stung her eyes. For so long she had sung to an empty cradle. Now her child was in her arms, small fingers gripping her robe, eyes blinking slowly as if trying to remember her mother's face. She began to sing again, softly, the same lullaby. The baby stirred and then settled, a tiny smile flickering across her lips. The song no longer filled a hollow room. It filled the night with warmth. The human watched silently. His face softened, he seemed tired, but in his eyes there was something else. Relief. Lyra looked up at him, her voice breaking between notes. "She remembers me, she knows me." He nodded once. "Of course she does, a child never forgets her mother." The words pierced her heart with truth. She hugged the child closer, rocking gently. Every sound, every movement reminded her that this was real. Her daughter had returned, not as a dream, not as an echo, but as life. For the first time in many nights, Lyra felt hope. The human had risked everything to bring her child back, but she still did not know why. She studied his scarred face, his tired eyes. "You could have left her. Why didn't you?" The human looked down at his hands. Dirt caked under his nails. Blood still dried on his sleeve. His voice was quiet, almost heavy. "Because once, long ago, my sister held a child. She lost her too. I saw what it did to her, the emptiness. I could not let another cradle stay empty if I had the chance to stop it." Lyra blinked. Stunned, she had not expected such honesty. His pain was real, and now she understood. He had seen grief, and he had chosen to fight it, even if it was not his own. The baby stirred again, a tiny cry escaping her lips. Lyra rocked her, humming the lullaby. The human stood, walking to the ruined doorway. His hand rested on the broken frame as he scanned the streets. "They will not stop searching. he said quietly. We have little time if you stay here. They will find you. Lyra kissed her daughter's forehead, whispering promises of safety. Her heart burned with conflict. To stay meant danger, to go with him meant trust. But when she looked at the baby, she knew she had no choice. Her child deserved life, not fear. She looked up at the human, her voice steady now. Then we will go. Take us where you think we will be safe. He turned. Meeting her eyes, his nod was firm. Good, but from here? The path grows harder. Lyra stood. Cradling her daughter close, her song faded into silence. Replaced by determination. She had lost once. She would not lose again. The human stepped into the shadows, signaling her to follow. The night was dark, the ruins endless, but Lyra felt something she had not felt in weeks. Her child's heartbeat against her chest, her own steps moving forward, and the faint strength of a human who had chosen compassion over cruelty. And though the danger still pressed around them, the cradle of her heart was no longer empty. It was full, it was alive, it was hers once more. The ruins stretched out before them like a maze of broken walls and shattered streets. The night sky glowed faintly with the light of distant fires, and smoke still drifted from places where homes once stood. Lyra held her child close, her arms aching but unwilling to let go. The human moved ahead, his eyes sharp, scanning every corner, every shadow. He did not speak often, only gave small hand signals. Guiding her silently through the wreckage behind them, faint sounds echoed. The steady rhythm of boots soldiers were closing in. They had tracked survivors all night, breaking doors, lighting torches, dragging the weak into the streets. Lyra's heart pounded as she thought of being discovered. Her daughter stirred in her arms, a tiny whimper escaping her lips. Lyra quickly pressed her cheek to the baby's head, rocking gently, praying she would stay quiet. The human froze, raising a hand. He motioned for her to stop. He crouched low, his body pressed against a broken wall. Lyra followed, pressing her back against the cold stone. Her breath caught in her throat as she heard voices. The soldiers were near, their torches cast long, moving shadows on the walls. The baby gave a soft cry. The sound was small, but in the silence it felt like thunder. Panic surged through Lyra. She rocked the child, whispering the lullaby under her breath. But fear made her voice shake. The human's eyes darted to her, sharp but not cruel. He quickly reached into his pack, pulling out a small scrap of cloth. He pressed it gently against the baby's mouth, not to harm her, but to muffle the sound. His hand trembled slightly as he did it, his eyes never leaving the torchlight outside. The soldiers passed, their voices faded, their footsteps moved on. The torches disappeared into another street. The human let out a breath. Lowering the cloth, he handed it back to her, whispering, "Hold her tighter." They cannot know. Lyra nodded, though her chest ached. She had never imagined depending on a human. Yet here he was, shielding her, guiding her, risking his life for a child not his own. They moved again, faster now. The human led them through a narrow alley, stepping over fallen beams and piles of stone. At one point, the ground gave way beneath his boot. He stumbled, and a sharp cry of pain escaped him. Lyra gasped, but he quickly caught himself. Limping forward, refusing to slow, she whispered, "You're hurt." He shook his head, his voice harsh but steady. "Keep moving, don't stop if they catch us." "It won't matter." The weight of his words struck her. She tightened her grip on her daughter and followed. Her mind screamed with fear, but her body moved, driven by the will to protect her child. At last they reached the edge of the city. Beyond lay open fields, dark and empty. The air was colder here, the smoke thinner. The human stopped, leaning against a crumbled wall. He looked back toward the city, his jaw clenched. "They will follow us," he said. "We need to cross the fields before dawn. Once the sun rises, we will be exposed." Lyra glanced at the baby in her arms. Her daughter was asleep now, her tiny breath soft against her skin. She looked back at the city, where torches still glowed in the distance. Her heart ached for what was lost, for the cradle, the home, the life that had been destroyed. But when she looked at her child, she knew none of it mattered anymore. The only home she needed was the one she held in her arms. The human adjusted his pack and nodded toward the fields. "Stay close. If anything happens, run and don't look back." His words sent a shiver down her spine. "And you?" she asked. Her voice trembling, he glanced at her, his eyes shadowed by the night. "I'll slow them down if I must. But I won't let them take you, not her. Not again." Before she could answer, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Lyra froze. The sound came from behind, from the ruins, a soldier's signal. Torches flared as shouts echoed. They had been spotted. "Run," the human hissed, grabbing her arm. He pulled her into the open field. Their feet pounded the earth. The cold air burned their lungs. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. Torches moved quickly through the ruins. "Chasing." The baby stirred, her small voice rising in confusion. Lyra rocked her as she ran, whispering broken words of comfort. Her arms burned, her legs screamed, but she did not stop. The human stayed at her side, his stride steady despite his limp. His breath was ragged, but his eyes were fixed forward. Arrows whistled through the air. One struck the ground near Lyra's feet. She gasped, nearly stumbling. The human grabbed her. Steadying her with one strong arm, he shouted, "Keep moving." His voice carried not fear, but fire. The field seemed endless, the horizon too far. But Lyra ran, fueled by love, fueled by the weight of the small life in her arms. Every step was a promise, a vow her daughter would live no matter what. The human's shadow stretched beside hers. He glanced back once, his jaw set. Soldiers poured into the fields, torches bright against the dark. The chase had begun, and as the night swallowed them whole, Lyra realized this was only the beginning. The empty cradle was behind her, but ahead lay a journey filled with danger, filled with sacrifice, and perhaps filled with something more than survival. The night stretched on, cold and merciless. Lyra and the human ran until their bodies ached at last. When the shouts behind them faded into the distance, the man guided her toward a cluster of trees at the edge of the fields. The branches were twisted and dark, but they offered cover. They slipped inside, hidden from torchlight. Lyra collapsed against the base of a tree, her chest rising and falling in harsh breaths. The baby whimpered in her arms. Tired from the chaos, Lyra rocked her gently. Humming the lullaby once more, the song was quiet. But even in exhaustion, it carried strength. The human knelt nearby, his hand pressed to his leg where blood seeped through torn fabric. "You're hurt," Lyra whispered, her eyes widening as she saw the wound more clearly. The man shook his head, trying to brush it aside. "It's nothing." A scratch, but she knew better. His limp had grown worse, and now in the dim glow of moonlight she could see the pain on his face. He winced as he tightened a strip of cloth around his thigh. His hands were rough, but they trembled from weakness for a long time. Silence filled the space between them. Only the baby's small breaths and the rustling of leaves broke the stillness. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice soft but sharp with curiosity. "Why do you do this? Why risk your life for me?" "For her." The human's eyes lifted slowly. His gaze was heavy, carrying memories carved deep into his soul. He sighed, leaning back against the tree. "Because once I failed, there was a time when I had a sister." She held a child in her arms, her daughter, my niece. I loved them both, but when the war came, I could not protect them. I came too late. All I found was silence and an empty cradle. Lyra's heart tightened. The word struck her like a blade. His pain was raw, his voice thick with memory. She had thought him a soldier without softness, but here he was, revealing scars that cut deeper than any wound on his body. He looked at her child, his jaw tightening. "When I found your daughter under the rubble, crying so small, so helpless, I saw her face, but I also saw theirs. I couldn't walk away. I would not walk away again." Lyra lowered her eyes, her arms tightened around her daughter. She whispered, "I sang to an empty cradle too. They told me she was gone, but I kept singing. I thought I was singing to memories, but perhaps my heart knew she was still alive." Their voices hung in the dark like fragile threads connecting two broken souls. Different worlds, different blood, yet the same wound carved into both. The loss of children, the cruelty of war. The baby stirred, her tiny hand reaching outward. Brushing against the human's arm, he froze, staring at the little fingers curling around his sleeve. His breath caught, his rough hand trembled. But he did not pull away. Instead, he let her grip him, the smallest connection bridging the widest distance. Lyra watched him, her suspicion softening. She whispered, "She does not fear you, not even for a moment." The human looked away, blinking as though hiding something in his eyes. "Children see what adults forget," he murmured. "They know the difference between a hand that protects and a hand that harms." Silence stretched again. But this time it was not heavy with distrust. It was softer, gentler, a silence of understanding. Lyra adjusted the baby in her arms, looking at him carefully. "You speak like someone who has lost too much." He gave a bitter smile. And you sing like someone who refuses to give up. Maybe that is why we are both still alive. For the first time since she met him, Lyra felt the wall of fear begin to break. She saw him not as a human enemy, not as a soldier of war, but as a man who had carried grief the same way she had. He was not here to take, he was here to give back what was lost. But the moment of fragile peace did not last long. A distant howl cut through the trees, not an animal, but a horn. Soldiers were calling again, searching the fields. The human's body tensed, he pushed himself up, gritting his teeth against the pain in his leg. We cannot stay here. They're sweeping the woods now if they catch us. It ends tonight. Lyra rose too. Though fear shook her knees, her baby stirred. Pressing close to her chest, she looked at the human, her voice quiet but steady. Then we keep moving. Together, he studied her for a long moment, then gave a short nod. Together, he repeated. As they stepped deeper into the forest, Lyra hummed her lullaby again, softer than the wind. The song no longer belonged only to her and her child. It carried through the trees, reaching the ears of a human who had lost everything but still chose to protect. And though danger pressed closer, though the horn of the hunters echoed behind them, there was something new between them now. Not just survival, but bond. Not just fear, but trust. The chase was not over, but neither was hope. The forest grew darker as they pressed forward. The branches above twisted like black fingers, hiding the stars. Every sound made Lyra's heart jump. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant echo of horns. Her daughter shifted in her arms, small whimpers rising before settling again against her chest. The human limped but did not slow. His face was pale in the moonlight. His jaw clenched against the pain in his leg. He carried himself like a man who had learned long ago that wounds could not stop him. His eyes scanned the shadows, sharp and steady. He seemed to feel danger before it appeared. Suddenly he raised his hand, signaling her to stop. Lyra froze, holding her breath. From ahead came the faint glow of torchlight. Soldiers were moving through the trees, sweeping the forest in lines. Their voices were low but cruel, every word sharp like a blade. The human crouched, pulling Lyra down with him. They're blocking the path, he whispered. His breath was heavy, but his voice stayed calm. We can't go forward, we'll have to break through. Fear stabbed Lyra's chest. Break through, she repeated, her voice trembling. How? They are many. We have nothing, the man's eyes hardened. We don't need to fight them all, only enough to open a path. Once you're past, don't look back, run and keep her safe. Her heart clenched. She shook her head fiercely. No, I will not leave you. You saved her, you saved me, we go together. The human looked at her, his jaw tight. For a moment silence stretched between them, then slowly his expression softened. Together then, he said quietly. They moved closer to the edge of the trees. The soldiers' torches flickered in the distance. Lyra's heart pounded like a drum. She tightened her arms around her daughter, whispering the lullaby under her breath, hoping it would calm the child even as fear consumed her own body. The human reached into his pack, pulling out a small blade. Its edge was worn, its hilt scarred, but his grip on it was firm. He glanced at her once more, his voice low. Stay behind me no matter what happens. Keep her safe. Before she could answer, the soldiers drew nearer. Torches cast golden light against the trees. The human rose suddenly from the shadows, his figure tall. His blade flashed in the dark as he stepped into their path. A shout rang out, soldiers turned, chaos erupted. The first man lunged and the human struck, fast and brutal. His movements were sharp, filled with desperate strength. He fought not like a soldier bound by orders, but like a protector with nothing left to lose. Lyra crouched low, pressing against a tree with her child. Her body shook. Every scream, every clash of steel made her flinch. The baby whimpered softly. Lyra hushed her, rocking gently, whispering the song through trembling lips. The human moved like fire, but the enemy pressed hard. A blow struck his shoulder, he staggered, but his blade still cut. Another soldier fell, but more rushed forward. The torches flared brighter. Shadows dancing wildly, one soldier broke away, charging toward Lyra. Her heart froze. She could not run, not with her child. She clutched her daughter close, whispering louder, as if her voice alone could protect her. But before the soldier reached her, the human threw himself forward. Tackling him to the ground, his blade drove deep. His body shook with exhaustion, but he did not stop. Go, he gasped, turning his head toward her. Run now. But Lyra's legs refused to move. She saw his strength fading, his body battered, his blood staining the earth. If she left, he would die, and though she had sworn to protect her daughter above all, something inside her would not allow her to abandon him. "No," she whispered fiercely, her voice breaking. "Not without you." The soldiers regrouped, more torches closing in. The human pushed himself to his feet. Swaying, his blade shook in his hand. He knew what was coming, and so did Lyra. But then, with trembling courage, she stepped forward beside him. She placed her daughter against her chest, covering her with her cloak. Her free hand gripped a broken branch from the ground. Her voice rose in song, the lullaby it carried through the trees. Strong and haunting, the soldiers paused. Startled by the sound, the human glanced at her, surprise flickering in his eyes for the first time. He saw not just grief in her voice, but defiance. She sang louder, every note a shield, every word a promise. The sound gave him strength. His grip tightened on his blade. His stance steadied. Together they faced the enemy. The fight was chaos. Torches flared, steel clashed, blood spilled. The human struck with all he had left. And Lyra's song wove through the night. The baby stirred but did not cry. As if calmed by her mother's courage, at last a path opened. The soldiers hesitated, unnerved by the song. The human seized the moment, grabbing Lyra's arm, pulling her through. They ran, stumbling, their bodies broken but unyielding. Behind them shouts echoed, but the forest swallowed the noise. When they finally stopped, breathless, far from the torches, the human dropped to his knees. His blade fell from his hand. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. Lyra knelt beside him, her baby safe in her arms, her voice still trembling with the last notes of the lullaby. He looked at her, his face pale, his eyes dim but alive. "You didn't leave," he whispered. Almost in disbelief, Lyra shook her head, tears shining. "You are part of us now. I will not leave you." The human closed his eyes briefly, his lips curving into the smallest smile, and in that moment, surrounded by darkness and fear, the bond between them was no longer fragile. It was unbreakable. The fight was not over, but they had survived the night together. Dawn broke slowly. The dark sky softened into shades of gray, then pale gold. The forest that had been filled with shadows now glowed with morning light. Birds stirred among the branches, their faint songs carrying a fragile peace. Lyra sat at the base of a tree. Her child safe in her arms, the human rested nearby, his back against the trunk, his body weary and bruised but alive. For the first time in many nights, the world did not feel like endless darkness. Lyra looked at her daughter, who stirred gently, tiny eyes blinking open. The baby let out a soft coo. Pressing closer to her chest, tears filled Lyra's eyes. But these were not the tears of grief. They were tears of wonder, of joy, of a miracle returned. She hummed the lullaby again. Her voice carried softly through the trees. The melody that had once filled an empty cradle now filled the air with life. The human opened his eyes slowly, his head turning toward her. He listened, his expression calm. For a long moment he said nothing, simply letting the sound wash over him. "It sounds different now," he said finally. His voice was quiet, rough from exhaustion, but filled with warmth. Lyra looked at him, her lips trembling into the smallest smile. "It is different. Before it was sorrow. Now it is hope." The human lowered his gaze, his hands resting on his knees. "Hope," he repeated, as though the word itself was foreign to him. Then he lifted his eyes to her again. "I never thought I would hear that sound again." She tilted her head. "What sound?" "The sound of family," he answered. His words were heavy but true. Silence stretched between them, but it was no longer heavy with fear or suspicion. It was soft, like a blanket shared between them. In that silence, Lyra realized the bond between them was no longer built only on survival. It had grown into something deeper, stronger, something unspoken but undeniable. Her baby reached out again, her tiny hand brushing against the human's arm. He froze, then slowly let her grip his finger. His rough hand dwarfed hers, but he did not pull away. He let the connection remain. His eyes softened, and Lyra saw something new there. Not only pain, not only duty, but healing. "You carried her back to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But perhaps you carried yourself back too." He gave a faint smile, though it was touched with sadness. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe she saved us both." The sun rose higher, lighting the forest floor. The cries of soldiers no longer echoed. The world felt quieter, safer, though danger still lingered beyond the horizon. For this moment they had peace, for this moment they had life. Lyra stood slowly, holding her child. She turned to the human, her voice steady. Come with us. You are not alone anymore. You fought for her, for me. You are part of us now." His eyes widened slightly, as if the word struck a place he had long forgotten. "Part of you," he repeated softly. His chest rose and fell with a heavy breath. Then he nodded once, slow but certain. "If you'll have me." Then yes, Lyra's heart steadied. She looked at him not as an enemy, not as a stranger, but as a protector, a friend, perhaps even as family. Her daughter cooed again, and for the first time in many nights, her lullaby rose freely, no longer trembling, no longer broken. It was strong, filled with love. They walked together as the forest gave way to open land. In the distance lay hills untouched by fire, places where they could hide, rebuild, start anew. The human limped, but Lyra stayed close, supporting him when he faltered. He carried no weapon now, but the strength in his steps showed he had chosen something greater than war. As the day warmed, they stopped near a stream. Lyra laid her daughter down on a patch of grass, letting her stretch and kick. The baby's laughter, soft and sweet, filled the air. Lyra's heart ached with happiness. The human knelt beside the child, his scarred hand brushing gently against the grass near her. He smiled faintly as he watched her tiny movements. "This is what they tried to destroy," he said, his voice low but firm. "Not just lives, but moments like this." Lyra nodded. "But they failed because she lives, because you chose to save her." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the morning light. "No, because you never stopped singing. Even when you thought she was gone, you sang. That strength is greater than anything I have ever seen." Her chest tightened at his words. She sat beside him, watching her daughter. For the first time in so long, she felt whole. The cradle of her heart was no longer empty. The song that once carried sorrow now carried life. As the sun climbed higher, the baby laughed again, a sound pure and bright. Lyra began to sing once more. The melody rose with the morning. Weaving through the trees, the human closed his eyes, letting the song carry him. And in that moment, 3 broken lives, an alien mother, her child, and a human scarred by war became something new. Not enemies, not strangers, but family. The cradle was no longer empty. The song had returned not to mourn the past, but to promise a future.